Hello chess friends and welcome to your of chess channel and welcome to a very special game that I decided to share today on my YouTube chess channel. It's a game that was suggested to be by one of my viewers, Adrian Tedesco. Adrian, thank you for posting me in this game. This is really a brilliant game played by Stockfish 13 against another top engine Komodo in the so-called Smith-Morra Gambit. And actually the cool part of this game is that we haven't covered so far some games in the Smith-Morra Gambit on my YouTube chess channel, so it's now really time to exploit this very sharp opening. In my opinion, the Smith-Morra Gambit is one of these gambits that you should try sometimes. I think it's not one of these bad gambits, although you're giving up some pawns, but I think you can play really a sharp game. I think it has some very cool surprise elements. I think still great players even don't like to play against a Smith-Morra Gambit. If you want to surprise your opponent, maybe you can try it out. In my opinion, as I said, it's not this one of this bad gambits, for instance, like the King's Gambit. I would never suggest you that you play the King's Gambit, but I think here the Smith-Morra Gambit is playable because you see now why. Here Stockfish will play really such a brutal attack, and in this very sharp opening, be prepared. This is really again such a perfect game played by the Stockfish engine. So let's check out now the game. Here e4 played by Stockfish, we have c5, and now comes this Smith-Morra Gambit move d4 immediately. It's similar to the Danish Gambit, but in the Danish Gambit instead of this move c5, e5 is played, and then d4. Here e takes d4, then again c3 is happening. So white is giving up many pawns just in order to get some kind of a piece activity. But okay, this Smith-Morra Gambit is in the Sicilian, so d4, c takes d4, again c3. We have now d takes c3, and here Stockfish plays the most aggressive approach. Here plays simply bishop to c4. Of course, it's possible here to play knight takes c3, but this is not the sharpest way. Here after move bishop to c4, Stockfish sacrifices another pawn, and now after c takes b2, we have bishop to b2. What we can notice now, okay, white has a great compensation because white has the piece activity. White has really a dominant bishop now all over the board, but of course has lost now 2 pawns. It's time to make something out of it, because if you don't make anything with the bishops, if this game gets more and more simplified, if this game goes into an endgame, then of course black is simply winning the game. So let's check out on what happened. After move bishop to b2, here e6 played by Komodo, and actually it's already like a theoretical novelty because I'm not seeing any games in the database in this particular line. The only human game in this particular line that I see is the move d6 now, and I see only one game in the database. So as I said, I think the Smith-Morra Gambit is still unexplored, so that's why I think you can use it sometimes because you can really surprise your opponent. Although it's a slight advantage here already for black, I simply like this bishop's activity, so as I said, maybe it's playable now for you. So here after move bishop to b2, we set e6 played by the Komodo, and we have now knight to f3 and now knight to f6. Here my Stockfish 13 engine at home suggests this move, knight to a6, suggests this line simply to play this knight to a6. It seems like a strange idea to play the knight on the edge of the board, because if you're familiar maybe with this idea is bishop to a6, but I think this is not such a good line here for white, because after b takes a6, I think that white will never give up such an active bishop for the knight on the edge of the board, although you have a double pawn structure, but still black is up some pawns. So that's why I don't think that white should ever give up one of these great bishops for the knight here in the continuation of the game. So that's why after move knight to a6, I'm showing you this line, because you could maybe face the Smith-Morra Gambit from black's perspective if you're maybe a Sicilian player. So that's why after move knight to a6, here a knight to c3 could happen, and now this is the way to go into the game, because we're playing a little bit around this move, because what we don't want to do is here to play the move knight to f6, because the move knight to f6 can always be met with the move e5, and then the knight gets kicked away. Then white has always the space advantage on the 5th rank. So here I think it's a very interesting idea to play first this move knight to a6, then knight to c5. Here maybe white could castle, but now with the move a6 and b5, I think also that black has some counter attack ideas here on the queen side with b5, maybe even with the move b4, simply kicking away this minor pieces on the c file, this bishop and the knight. So as I said, maybe this is something that you should study. As I said, there are simply millions and millions of different opportunities for white, for black. Of course, we cannot analyze them all in a small video like this, but as I said, I think this is a very interesting approach. Knight to a6, knight to c5, and a6 b5, simply attacking further the queen. So okay, after move knight to f3, here instead of this move knight to a6, Komodo played the move knight to f6. Here knight to c3, we have bishop to b4, castling, played by Stockfish, and here b6 by the Komodo engine. We have now rook to c1, and now castling also here by Komodo. We have e5. This is a common move, I think, in the Smith-Morra Gambit. This move is happening many times. What we can notice now after move e5, and here knight to e8 was played, is that white is simply attacking now this area, because what we can notice, first of all, this advanced pawn is on the 5th rank, and this advanced pawn is also on the king side. So that's why this is the area that we're attacking. Now it's simply not time to push anything here on the queen side. It's simply time to attack this area here with some pawn moves, g4, h4, h5, if it's possible, getting all of our pieces towards the king side. Now maybe bishop to d3 and similar ideas, because what we can notice also after move e5 and knight to e8, that black is lacking of minor piece defenders. What I mean about minor piece defenders is that black has only here pawns as defensive pieces in front of the king, so the knight is a little bit out of game. Here, instead of this move knight to e8, you could maybe try bishop to c3, but it's not so good, I think, because you get simply this one, rook takes c3. Okay, you could try to attack knight to e4, you could attack the rook, but now rook to e3 could happen. Knight to c5 is sort of must move, but now I like this idea, knight to d4, and again I'm pointing out with this advanced pawn, with some opportunities to play rook to g3, maybe rook to h3, with some bishop's activities here on towards the king side. I think that black is simply tactically and strategically lost. So be the judge of this position, but I simply like so much the white's position with opportunity somehow get, as I said, this rook on the g or h file. So I think, as I said, that black gets smashed simply tactically here. So here after move e5, as said, knight to e8, we have now queen to d3, Stockfish 13 connects the rooks. The clear idea is of course to play rook to d1. In the continuation of the game, we have bishop to e7. Here Komodo understands the position, I think, very good, because as we said, black doesn't have minor piece defenders, has only this knight, which is a little bit far away from the action when it comes here to king side, and also only these 3 pieces. So that's why getting the bishop is here a natural idea. So here rook from f to d1, Stockfish builds really, again, this such a great setup. You know, when Stockfish has this rook activity on the open file, on the semi-open file, this bishop is active, this bishop is active, the knights are on natural squares, on square c3 and f3, that are basically the best squares for the knights. And then also here the queen is centralized. So you know, as I said, when Stockfish builds such a great setup, you know that some weird stuff is happening for sure. So here after move rook from f to d1, now knight to c6, and now we have a very interesting move by Stockfish. It's the move h4. Here Stockfish realized that the queen is a little bit overloaded, because the queen is a little bit overloaded around the square d7 and also on this diagonal, because if you take now here with the move bishop to h4, it's not so good because you get bishop to b5. Now you could try maybe bishop to d7, because the threat was obviously here bishop takes c6, because you cannot take here d takes c6 is not an opportunity. You lose here the queen on the d file, at least you lose one minor piece because the bishop has to take. So here after potential bishop to b7, now queen to d7 could happen, and the problem is now you have to play different moves. You have to play something like knight to a5, because here if you play queen to d7, then it's simply you're lost. Queen to d7, here a6, white can take of course the bishop. Here you can maybe take out this one, but here after rook to b6 you see also the knight is hanging and also the bishop is hanging. So again, black is simply lost. So really wild stuff, this move h4, really understanding these tactical possibilities, that the queen is a little bit overloaded here on the d file and also on this diagonal. Really cool move here by Stockfish 13. Here after move knight to a5, here Komodo chases the bishop. We have bishop to b5, knight to c7, and here a very interesting move, knight to e4, because we can notice after the move e5 and this backward pawn on d7 that black has really here some dark square problems. So that's why this move knight to e5 very cool, now with opportunities even to play knight to d6 or maybe even knight to g5. After knight to d6 and bishop to d6 and e takes d6, I think this bishop gets very dangerous. So I don't think that black has even time to take out here the bishop on b5. So that's why here after bishop to b5, here bishop to B7 was played by Komodo, and now comes the stunner of the game. This is really wild what Stockfish does now. Here Stockfish plays a really brutal move, knight to f6. This is, I think, the move of the decade. I'm just kidding, but this is really sick stuff what Stockfish did here. Knight to f6, basically opening the position for this Darksword bishop. This bishop, as we said, is aiming towards the king. Now what you can do, of course, if you don't react, you get checkmated on h7, so you have to take. Here g takes f6 was played. Now we have rook to c7. Again, you see the queen is a little bit overloaded. Here after move queen to c7, we have now here the move e takes f6, and now bishop to f6. So here the Komodo has to bring simply the bishop here on f6, has to sacrifice the bishop, because if you try here something like bishop to c5, the problem is now you cannot do moves as, I don't know, maybe you can try here something like you can try maybe something like queen to d2, maybe preparing queen to g5, but actually this is not possible because you get this one, queen to g3. So that was, I think, a great preparation here by Komodo. So that's why after move bishop to c5, there is actually a better move for white, and it's the move knight to e5. Knight to e5 is simply winning the game immediately, because the serious threat is now finally queen to g3. We have cut off here the connection between the queen and the square g3. So now queen to g3, as I said, simply winning the game, because whatever you do, even if you move here here the king, then queen to g3 is happening, and the problem is now you cannot cover here with the move rook to g8, because you get then knight to f7, a very cool checkmate. So that's why, as said, really brilliant stuff by Stockfish here. After the move e takes f6, you see the Komodo engine has to sacrifice the bishop back. That's actually a cool part of this tactic. Bishop to f6, now bishop to f6, and we can notice now that black has now several weaknesses on the r-squares. Although black is up the exchange, but it's simply strategically and tactically lost here for game here for black. After move bishop to f6, we have queen to f4, we have knight to g5, threatening checkmate on h7. So that's why queen to f5, we have queen to d4. What Stockfish is trying now, of course, is somehow get maybe the bishop to h8 and then deliver checkmate on g7, or get the bishop at least somewhere else and then open the diagonal for the queen and then deliver checkmate on g7, because also the knight is very dangerous here around the square h7. So here e5. If you try now rook from a to c8, let's see now a bad move for black, then you get this one, bishop to d3 is also a threat. So see, bishop to d3, if you move the queen now, then you get bishop to h7, it's also checkmate. So that are the actual threats here by Stockfish 13. So that's why here black has to be careful. Here e5 was played, and okay, what black is hoping for is, of course, this scenario, queen to e5, then we can trade off the queens, and then the game is more simplified and black is up the exchange. So that's why it's not possible. Even if you try to take with the bishop to e5, then the problem is this one, you get a knight to c6. You see, you're losing at least one of these pieces. Now you have to play, I think, bishop to c6 here after move d takes c6. Okay, you could try now rook to d3 with ideas to get the move rook to g3, but actually here comes the stunner c5. Has to be played. Now this wasn't played in the game, but that was the calculation that I studied at home. Now c5 has to be played. Now the queen gets to c3, and now f6 is actually possible, because even if you try queen to c4, or even if you try a rook to g3 to get maybe the rook here on the g file, actually you don't gain anything, because you get simply f takes e5, and now after potential knight to e6, okay, you had your fun with one check, but what now? Nothing dramatically is going on. White is simply lost. So that's why I'm showing you this, because white and black have to be careful, really. At least when we humans are watching this top engine games, you see there are always these tactical ideas for white, for black. So that's said, here after move e5, you see bishop to e5, queen to e5 are not possibilities. So that's why here queen to d6 has to be played by Stockfish 13. In the continuation, we have now h6, trying to kick away the knight, but now comes again a new stunner here by Stockfish 13. Stockfish plays now the rook lift, because it's now a different story, because after h6 g5 that was played in the game, now rook to g3, really wild stuff. And what to do, you have to close here the g file, because if you don't do that, you get simply checkmated. g4, but now you see the bishop comes into the game. We have bishop to d3, we have bishop to d3, and now bishop takes d3, we have queen to d3, but now queen to d1, attacking simply the g4. Here in the continuation, rook from a to c8, we have rook to g4, queen to g6 has to be played because you're getting checkmated. But now a new stunner, h5, you cannot move the queen, of course, so that's why knight to c6. But now a very cool move again by Stockfish 13, queen to c1 here, and after move knight to d4, here queen to h6. In this position, the Komodo engine resigned. So whatever you do, of course, you can try maybe one check, knight to f3, but it's nothing dramatic here. G takes f3, you can only prolong the game by playing some checks, but here of course queen to g7 is checkmate. So here actually after move h5, it's of course completely winning. The queen gets trapped. What we want to do is simply deflect the queen. So you see now after move knight to c6, even after move queen to c1, if you take now, the problem is now you get simply here queen to h6. You cannot protect also this checkmate on h8. So whatever you do, you cannot get your queen here. You can only maybe take here queen to h5, but it only prolongs the game for a while. Queen to h5 and then queen to h is happening for sure. So really brilliant game by Stockfish 13. I really enjoyed this game in the Morra Gambit. Really cool game. Thank you, Adrian, for posting us this game. If you have some other suggestions, maybe in the stop engine level, maybe you can also post me some other great games played by Stockfish 13, Alpha 0, Lila 0, or maybe some other engines. I would love to cover them. I think this was really brilliant game, really sharp game. This move knight to f6 was the stunner of the game, simply opening the position on dark push. Really, again, simply brilliant Stockfish 13 stuff. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game like I did. If you want to see more brutal attacks like this, check out my commented chess games played by computer series with some more great games played by Alpha 0, Alila 0, and Stockfish 13. And if you want to see humans battling in their best chess games, check out my best chess games of all time series. Here's also the link. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.